she has the first PhD on Midrash and Parshanut from JTS 2 years ago, and she's teaching in York University in Toronto, and her topics is about Rashi, whether Rashi is going along with the Halakhah or just contradict or a little bit as a new way of interpretation. Please.
Yes. So I'll begin with the big can of worms question, and then move on from there to the more specific questions at the top of the handout that I circulated. So for a show of hands, so the handout should be coming around. Did it stop at...
It's concealed.
It's concealed.
There you go. No, it should not be concealed. Okay, okay, it's coming around. So there are questions at the top of the handout. Did Rashi write the Torah commentary that he set out to write? Raise your hand if you think that he did. Did he write the document that he meant to write? Yeah, raise your hands if you think he wrote it.
I'll take the bait.
Okay, anybody else?
Sure.
Or did he fail in his goal? Okay, so there's some debate. If you raise your hand, to say that Rashi did not write the Torah commentary that he set out to write, that is, that you are in the camp that Rashi intended to write a Pshat Torah commentary but didn't, then you were in the good company of Rashbam, Ibn Ezra, and Avraham Grossman, among others. We'll let you stay. In the introduction to Ibn Ezra's Safar Brura, he explained that, quote, subsequent generations, that is, subsequent to the sages of the Talmud, made Darash the basis of their commentaries, like Rabbi Solomon of blessed memory, who wrote a Darash biblical commentary while thinking that it was Pshat. Rashbam's famous comment on Genesis 37:2 implies that late in life his grandfather, Rashi, shared with him that, quote, if only he had had the time, he would have written new, revised commentaries based on the insights into the plain meaning of Scripture that are newly thought of day by day. This is usually understood as an admission on Rashi's part that he did not write the Pshat Torah commentary he intended to, which takes for granted that he intended to write a Pshat Torah commentary in the first place. While this may be the case, I'd like to suggest rather that this comment of Rashbam's, or that he attributes to Rashi, is an acknowledgement that the commentary that Rashi did write is not a Pshat-oriented commentary, because it isn't, and that he'd have liked to write another commentary or more Pshat comments in his commentary, you can ask me about that later, based on the Pshatot HaMitchadshim B'chol Yom. This does not mean that Rashi intended to write a Pshat commentary in the first place. In fact, in a minute, I hope to show you that Rashi did not intend to write primarily Pshat commentary. Avraham Grossman, in his relatively recent book on Rashi, titled Rashi, explained that the primary reason why scholars have struggled so, quote, struggled so with the relationship between Pshat and Drash in Rashi's commentary is his lack of consistency. A close examination of his commentaries shows that he uses rabbinic midrashim that fail to meet his two criteria of linguistic and substantive compatibility, end quote. Underlying this statement is an assumption that Rashi purported to include in his commentary only those interpretations that met these two criteria. That is, according to Grossman, Rashi intended to apply these principles of linguistic and substantive compatibility as the means of determining whether or not a midrashic interpretation was fit for inclusion in the Torah commentary. According to Grossman, though, some midrashim were just too good that Rashi could not help but include them, even though, according to Grossman, they did not fit Rashi's two criteria. At the same time, Grossman also spends a few pages on Rashi's profound affection for midrash and explains Rashi's midrashic omnisignificant approach, to borrow a term from James Kugel. It seems to me, though, that a Pshat-only approach is mutually exclusive from any kind of omnisignificant midrashic approach. The reality is, though, that the vast majority of Rashi's Torah commentary is midrashic. So there's our problem. Who agreed that Rashi did write the Torah commentary he intended to? Chaim? Alicia? This question largely turns on one's reading of Rashi's so-called methodological statement of Genesis 3:8. I believe I included that on the handout. The school of thought that Rashi set out to write a primarily Pshat Torah commentary emphasizes the first part of Rashi's statement, Vani lo bati l'pshuto shel mikra, period, and largely ignores the rest of the statement. In 1986, Sarah Kamin, Zichrono Livracha, drew our attention to the statement's continuation so that it reads, Vani lo bati l'pshuto shel mikra, ula agada hamiyashavet dvar hamikra, dvar devor lefanav. By simply paying attention to the rest of this sentence, she accounted for the fact that well over 2/3 of Rashi's commentary is drawn from the first millennium rabbinic sources, and largely showed that in the commentary, Rashi showed no preference or priority for pshuto interpretations over midrashic ones. Rashi never actually used the word pshat, he only uses the term pshuto. Kamin also showed that Rashi's sometimes identifications of a comment either as pshuto or midrasho are indicators as to whether or not a comment was drawn from a midrashic source, and it's not an indicator of a particular hermeneutic. The question remains, though, as to how Rashi chose what to include and how to present it. In my earlier research, which was limited to narrative, that is, non-legal portions of Rashi's Torah commentary, I posited that Rashi's Torah commentary is a high medieval midrashic anthology in the form of a commentary, and that Rashi's comment on Genesis 3:8 is his statement of his anthological selection principle, in which he stated his intention to offer a full but selective interpretation of the text. He says, Yesh midrashe harba, something, it's in the comment, but in English, I didn't put the Hebrew in my talk, there are already many collections of Agadic midrash. They already exist. So what is his purpose? V'ani lo bati elu pshuto shel mikra. I have only come for the plain sense of Scripture and for the Agada that reconciles the word of Scripture in its sense, each word of the verse, and its meaning, well-turned phrase. That is to say, that he will include those midrashim that he deems the best explanations of the verse. Further, analysis of the Torah commentary shows that Rashi was not by any means committed to offering a single authoritative interpretation of the text, but would often present two and sometimes more interpretations, each offering some other way of resolving a real or imagined difficulty in the text. Rashi brought more than pshuto and earlier rabbinic exegesis to bear on his interpretations of the text, and to the end of offering a full interpretation, he would often appeal to Targum and Old French for the sake of clarity, understanding, and full explanation. Rashi employed the biblical text both as the means of selecting interpretations from the sea of first millennium rabbinic literature, and as the means of reworking rabbinic teaching in relation to the lemma, the Dibur HaMathil, and used the biblical text as the framework for the organization of his proposed interpretations. Are there other reasons to conceive of Rashi's Torah commentary as a midrashic anthology? Yes, I'm so glad that you asked. Oh boy. The genre of midrashic anthology allowed Rashi to include multiple and different kinds of interpretations, just as the rabbis before him did in their collections. But in his anthology, Rashi was more selective because he wasn't interested in preservation, but in something else. The other advantage of midrashic anthology is that it allowed Rashi to rework his source content, which he did. Unlike anonymous midrashic collectors, Rashi signed his name to his work, and this allowed him to change, rework, recast, and reimagine his source content. In this scheme, Rashi's pshuto interpretations, although not always labeled as such, are one among multiple ways to understand a text. Okay. So, earlier treatments of this question of whether or not Rashi limited himself to the Halakhah, Psukah, or not in his Torah commentary have focused primarily on the few comments noted by Poznansky in 1913 in which Rashi interpreted a text contrary to the Halakhah, or have been pursued within the larger context of investigating the relationship between Pshat and Drush in the Torah commentary. I'll just note here that of the different scholars, Poznansky, Gellis, Kasher, who have taken up this question, each of them say Rashi hewed to the Halakhah Psukah, and each of them note a number of exceptions. If you add up, each only names 4 or 5 exceptions, but if you add up all the exceptions, you get to about 10. So they don't agree on what the exceptions are. I tried something completely different in investigating this question. I'm going to go off script for a minute. which is that I typed into my Rashi search engine in the lousy printed editions, Dvar Acher, and I looked only at verses dealing with the law, and there are a whole bunch of Dvar Achers in Rashi. So I followed up on those in the manuscript, and I have a number of examples. So one example for more of the Iyun is the first on your page, Deuteronomy 12:3-5. Where Rashi offers 3 interpretive suggestions. I will have to skip through the detailed explanation of what he does, but one of those explanations is the Halakhah Psuka, which is completely unmarked. One is a pshuto, and I believe that one of them is a quotation, Amar Rabbi Yishmael. Sorry, I'm going to take this. Thank you. Yes, the Amar Rabbi Ishmael. So he offers 3 different interpretations on a legal verse and doesn't tell you which is the Halakhah Psuka. Thank you. Okay, so what I think is noteworthy here, there are 2 more examples at the end of the handout, but the we look at Genesis 3:8. Okay, so we look at Genesis 3:8. Right. Okay. Rashi's comments on Exodus 23:2 and Deuteronomy 12:4 are very similar structurally. You can see also in 23:2 he fleshes out a little bit more. What I think we could understand is more of a methodological statement also in legal context. He says there are many midrashim. He does tell you which ones are the rabbinic ones. He tells you how he thinks you should understand the verse, and he includes also the Torah. So we can see from these examples, and quite a few more, I've only really brought you 3, plus this one on 23:2 that everybody points to as noteworthy, as the one that everybody agrees on. Structurally, they are similar. And I think from this, it's very clear there are many examples where Rashi does not bring the Halakhah Psuka. That is not his interest here, and he is, in halachic context, employing the same anthological methodology as he was in narrative context as well. And you will be able to read this, hopefully, very soon, and talk to me about it later.
Thank you very much. 1 or 2 minutes of comments, that's all, and then the last one.
Can you just give me a bottom line on what he was doing with law?
So he's not doing what scholars have until now, I think, posited. What is he doing? He's doing the same thing he's doing in narrative texts, which is anthologizing, explaining the text fully, offering multiple interpretations as a midrashic work. That is, midrashim collect multiple different positions and put them there.
So the ones that make best sense of the law as midrashim?
Yes. I think so, which isn't necessarily the Halakhah Psuka, which also then tells us it's not a prescriptive text, he's not doing Halakhah here, there's all kinds of conclusions to be drawn from this. You were next, right?